Continuing on, our next presentation is from Mark Shlanta, the Chief Executive Officer of SDN Communications. As CEO, Mark has led efforts to expand SDN's network across South Dakota and into neighboring states, and increased business and institutional access to broadband connectivity. He also spearheaded the development of the company's data center and co-location facility in northwestern Sioux Falls. Today, Mark will talk about the numerous private and public partnerships that are helping bridge the digital divide in South Dakota. He'll talk about a few of the programs helping to expand connectivity to some of South Dakota's most rural areas. But before I hand the floor over to Mark, I would like to thank SDN Communications for being our gold level sponsor for this event. Without your sponsorship, this event would not have been a success. A big thank you to everyone at SDN Communications.
One of the things I'm most proud of today is to be one of the sponsors of the Cybersecurity Summit for SDN, to be partnering with other great businesses and chamber partners in helping to host this conference. Right, so talking a little bit about the state of South Dakota in terms of broadband services. You can see on the slides that the independent phone companies, or the rural broadband providers of the state of South Dakota, cover more than 80% of the state's landmass, the geography of the state. And they continue to press forward and edge out into some of the and underserved areas of the state every year. As they continue to build out their own markets and the markets that surround their service areas, we're estimating that by the end of 2021, that the independent phone companies or the rural broadband providers will have fiber to the prim to over 93% of the homes, farms, ranches, and businesses within their geography, and starting to enter areas beyond their geographies as well. This expansion of fiber to the prim really has come about over the last decade. And if you look back over the last 5 years, you know, one of the things that makes me most proud of our industry is that we've invested over $500 million collectively across the 18 members of the South Dakota Telecommunications Association and SDN, taking fiber to more premises, homes, ranches, businesses, just locations that have a demand for broadband services. So I want to talk a little bit about how some of these projects are funded, especially in the areas that are outside of the market areas served by the rural broadband providers. The federal government, through the Department of Agriculture, has a couple of programs that are underway at the moment. And in 2019, 3 companies that serve parts of South Dakota applied for grants and were awarded grants. Those 3 companies are outlined here. Valley Communications, so they're going to be serving parts of rural Moody County, along as well as parts west of Brookings from Volga toward De Smet. So think of that, those rural farms, those rural ranches that are in those areas, that as this particular grant is put into motion, new fiber will be delivered to many of the homes and businesses within these service territories. Another grant that was awarded by the Department of Agriculture came to SDN Communications. So this is new for us. We have not historically served consumers, so we're going to be entering into a new area for us, but we're going to take on some rural areas in the Black Hills. We'll build some fiber facilities west out of Rapid City and serve parts of Nemo, Rochford, and Silver City. And then one of our partners out of Sioux Center, Iowa, Premier Communications, they serve parts of the state of South Dakota, but there's some rural areas south of Alcester along the Iowa border. So you'll see them expanding their fiber footprint in the state, serving more of the homes, farms, and ranches in that area of the state. So I touched on SDN's USDA grant, and I'll just tell you a little bit more about it. It's a $4.4 million project The federal government, through the USDA, will be providing $3.3 million in funding, and SDN will be matching that with 25% of the funds, or $1.1 million. The project is shown as the blue lines in the graphic, and we'll be building roughly 45 miles of fiber going west from Rapid, touching about 300 homes in those 3 communities that I mentioned earlier. And our hope is to build a tower, I'll say in or near each of those communities, to also expand mobile services and some other mobile broadband services in those areas. And I'd like to just say thank you to the volunteer fire departments in those areas. Without their support and helping us reach the community members, it would have been tough for us, I think, to be successful with this grant. In addition, just tell you about an application that SDN put in to expand further into the Black Hills and serve some of these and underserved areas. Here in 2020, we put in an $8 million project application that would be matched by $6 million from the USDA and funded by $2 million from SDN. And it would extend 40 miles of fiber facilities, largely along the Highway 385 corridor. We'd build 8 towers and work to develop services to many of the cabins, campgrounds, businesses along that Highway 385 corridor. In addition, we'll help provide mobile services, hoping to improve the, I'll say, public safety and just the tourist experience when people are in the Black Hills. In addition to some of the federal projects that I touched on earlier through the Department of Agriculture, the state of South Dakota has also been making investments in broadband facilities in the state. In 2019, Governor Noem appropriated $5 million for new broadband investments. That $5 million state award was matched by $7 million of new funds also from the broadband industry. There were 8 projects in total. 6 of those projects went to the members of SDN and SDTA, and those projects will touch nearly 5,000 homes and a little over 100 businesses across the state. I think that the 2019 broadband grant program from the state was a good success. The governor also then had another $5 million in her budget in 2020, but she was able to supplement that $5 million with another $6.5 million of CARES Act funding to help expand broadband services. I think one of the things we've learned and seen throughout 2020 is how broadband services support work from home environments, learning from home, so e-learning, and then telehealth environments. And healthcare, as we know, throughout 2020 has been a huge need across the state in terms of trying to be able to see patients remotely. And we've heard from the healthcare providers that they've jumped from, I'll say, in the dozens per week of e-visits to thousands per week at its peak back in the May, June timeframe of this year. So back to the governor's grants, she offered $11.5 million, and that was matched by another $18 million from the rural industry. 14 projects in total, and you can see the various companies from SDN and SDTA that were awarded those grants, touching nearly 4,000 homes and 300 businesses. So in summary, for Connect South Dakota, $16.5 million investment by the state and another $25 million of investment by the broadband industry, totaling over 22 projects, 8,500 households, and nearly 400 businesses that will all be receiving fiber to the prim services really from starting last year in 2019 through the end of June in 2021 is when the last of these projects that have been funded is scheduled to be completed. So I wanted to talk about another federal program that is nationwide, and it'll be helping expand broadband services across the country. And this comes through the FCC, so a different agency at the federal level. I first talked about the Department of Agriculture, but this Rural Digital Opportunity Fund auction comes through the FCC. We're expecting announcements in the fourth quarter here of 2020. So potentially as early as tomorrow, we could start to see some of those announcements come out. But the FCC has targeted over 6 million unserved and underserved homes and businesses. And in the state of South Dakota, 3 companies have applied for what's called in the industry RDOF funds. Those companies include RC Technologies, serving parts of the northeast corner of the state, Valley Telecommunications, serving some of the areas in the north central and along the Highway 14 corridor, and then West River Telecommunications, serving parts of the northwest part of the state near the North Dakota-South Dakota border. I wanted to finish with a couple of quotes from FCC Chairman Pai. And he's talked and has certainly been a huge advocate for rural broadband services. And his quote that he has outlined here is the COVID-19 pandemic. And I touched on some of that in my earlier remarks, just highlights the need for rural broadband services. He says, the COVID-19 pandemic highlights the need for the Commission to continue its work to ensure that all Americans have access to high-speed broadband as soon as possible. That's one reason we're moving full speed ahead with the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. And if you go deeper into the chairman's comments, he'll touch on the need for job creation and supporting rural workers. He'll touch on e-learning environments, as we saw last year, where school-age children largely left the classrooms and went home to finish the school year. And then the telehealth environment. Certainly we saw through the pandemic that many more patients were able to receive access to healthcare and supporting healthcare after their visits through their rural broadband connections. So certainly the FCC is putting a huge effort into continuing to fund rural broadband deployments across the country. So